and ask each panelist to speak for about 2 to 3 minutes on each question. And hopefully, when there are 2 persons from the same country, only one of you will answer that question, and then later on, when you get time, you perhaps can take up that question again. 3 questions are very simple. We would like to know what kind of private sector that exists in your country and what are the problems. That is one. The second is we would like to know what kind of regulation exists there on the health system in general and in the private sector, in particular. And the third one is that how people's movement, people and patients' movements, is really making efforts to make the health system accountable by getting more regulation, by trying different other methods which may or may not be connected to regulation, but is to make them more transparent and accountable. So these are the 3 major areas that we are going to explore. So shall we start with the first question, which is to describe your health system and the private sector there, and what are the problems related to the patients' rights, patients, there is malpractices and negligence of the patients and all. So let us, where will we start? Shall we start from Kenya? So first Kenya, and then you come to Sri Lanka, then you come to Nepal, and then we keep Bangladesh at the end. Okay? So let's start with you. Yeah.
So I began by saying that Kenya does recognize the right to health, and now it is legislated. It is in the Kenya Constitution 2010. It promotes the right to health, including reproductive health care. It does also provide that no one should be denied emergency medical care. It first also provides for the right to life, including aspects where safe and legal abortion can be undertaken. But on the other hand, it has one side the public health care, which now is decentralized. Following suit maybe of India and the other countries, Kenya now has a national government and 47 county governments. In the schedule of how operations should be, the national government has remained with the regulations, policies, standardization. The actual implementation is within the county governments. On the other hand, it does recognize the private health providers. This includes private companies, insurance companies. But one thing for you to note about Kenya after making this a constitutional right, we have had problems with implementation. The national government does not want to let go. And the county governments where the health is supposed to be being received have held that this is a function given to us within the constitution. So if we follow the Kenya history, we have had a lot of push and back with very many strikes. For the first time in the history of Kenya, we have had doctors going on strike. Nurses have been on strike for the last almost 2 years. Clinicians have also joined in. So clearly we are looking at a system that is so fragile. But at the end of the day, at the bottom line is the citizen. And nobody has sought to find out what the citizen wants. Before the campaign and the last election we had, they made it a campaign tool where the national government now said, let go, can we have this undertaken at the county level? But the doctors have remained at the center. They have said they do not, some of them do not want to go to the county government, hoping to remain at the central level. In the process, the private sector has come in and has almost monopolized health service. And some of the health facilities are run by public medical doctors. So you have on one side the private companies that remain mostly not well regulated, but at the same time we have the public sector that has all the laws. We have the nursing law, clinician law, the medical practitioners, dentist board, who are supposed to be self-regulating themselves. Recently last year, we enacted a health act. So we now have a health law that tries to bring all the other bodies together into one umbrella. That has not been implemented. We have a Patients Charter, and I brought a copy. The Patients Charter, the Kenya National Patients' Rights Charter, this was developed in 2013, soon after we got the new constitution. But I'll tell you, we have gone round, because I'm from the human rights movement, trying to find out how many patients are aware of this charter and whether it is used. And the verdict and the answer we give you is very few Kenyans, including even medical practitioners themselves, are aware that this is a government charter and they're supposed to comply with it. So I think just in short to say that we have a very vibrant public sector, but on the other hand it has given into private sector, which nobody seems to be controlling. The fees are very high. You can't get treatment in a private hospital without paying the deposit, and the deposit is determined by the hospital. Nobody is checking that. We have very many cases of negligence happening in the private sector, but very few of the cases get to be prosecuted. Medical board, I helped them to put together their regulations not long ago after the new constitution. And one of the things I asked is, can we open up the medical dentist board to non-medical officers, so that some of the members of citizens can sit on your board as well? Because there's aspects of where the doctors would love to cover each other. The same happens also, of course, from even the legal fraternity where I come from, that you are regulating yourself and you want to cover up for mistakes of your brothers and sisters. So I think in short is that we have a clear system. It is not for want of law, we have laws. It's not for want of regulations, we have regulations. The challenge is at the implementation. Can I stop there?
Okay, great. Thank you. Shall we go to Sri Lanka? And this is, again, I think, please describe your system and please describe what kind of violations are taking place. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us to this learning experience workshop and to express our views on the Sri Lankan system. If you look at Sri Lankan health system, actually I would rather say it is fairly an old system in the region, where the civil medical department was established way back in 1854. So since 1854, it's almost 160 years. Throughout that period is the public health services which was developed. Clearly stipulated as a right. So health is not a fundamental right according to our present constitution. And for that matter, life is also not right, because it's not really clearly stated. But as looking from a negative perspective, negative angle, in 2002 there was a court judgment in the Supreme Court which said it's implied through a certain judgment that it is used as from an indirect way to have health is a right. There was a judgment in the Supreme Court which gave a very landmark judgment giving right to health, right to life, and actually holding on to that. Now in the court of law, people are going and challenging issues when it comes to right to health. So that is how things stay. And if you look at the health system perspective, we have about 1,200 health institutions which is made by public government, and there are a few hundred, about 60 private hospitals, and possibly about a couple of thousand small clinics run by GPs. GPs are the people who are in the doctors. But still 95% of the inpatient care is done in government sector. And only about 50% of outpatient care is done in the public sector. So it's private sector is about 50% of the ambulatory care plus 5% of inpatient care. So that is how things work. But on the other hand, there are several issues happening because our private sector is not huge as in India or many other countries. Still, the health workforce, if you look at, majority who works in the private sector is after hours doctors who are government servants. Therefore, it happens before 8 o'clock in the morning or after 4 o'clock. So the private sector is at least for about 80% of run by employees of the government. So that is how things work. And if I tell you the common issues that we are seeing in this our country, where the literacy rate, general literacy is about 95%. But still there is huge asymmetry of information when you become a patient. So to what extent you are being aware about your disease or illness. That is where if any right violations would happen. So that is a key thing that I would really say, because whatever the literacy rate, but your health literacy, I would rather say, with all these gadgets, equipment, technology, people's health literacy would be not to that extent. Therefore, there can be serious issues. For example, participating in decision making would rather be given to the medical practitioner or the hospital or the laboratory person rather than to the person. So these are the areas that violations can occur. Secondly, I would say, therefore unnecessary investigations, and people also have that myth that the investigations has to be done, and with it's a sophisticated investigation, it's better. So it's very difficult to get those things out of mind. The same thing on the drugs. We have been working so much on generic prescription and so on, but still a fairly large proportion of the people think that the brand is better. So although the government gets bulk purchases on generic drugs and generic drugs is issued in the government service, but in the private sector is basically on brand names, people think brands are better. So it's very difficult to counter those. Here the exploitation occurs because the brand names are a couple of fold expensive than the generic. So the pharmacists, doctors and kickbacks can make a huge difference on health and access to health. And unregulated fees is a huge issue. I saw it was stated in the morning also. And I think that is a major problem that we have. Because as general cesarean section or a vaginal delivery can go from 300,000 to 100,000 or beyond, depending on the specialist and depending on the hospital and so on. That is not still regulated. These are issues. And I would again tell medicalization of physiological conditions. This happens because there is money. For example, having 4 ultrasound scans for a pregnancy. Do you need it? Do you need a huge CT scan or a PET scan investigation for just a minute headache? But to maintain those equipment in the private sector, there is a minimum number of tests that has to be done to maintain. So there is incentives, there is push for people to prescribe and to do. So all these matters when it comes to patient rights. And there are issues also in less qualified, unqualified people in the private sector, particularly small clinics and even in hospitals, in times where they cannot get qualified people. So there are issues relating to those in our sector and in Sri Lanka. Having a good health system, I personally feel that we are a bit derailing from the foundations we have. So that is something seriously considering us, and there is a bit of less support even from public to get things online, because this whatever health literacy they have, the brains have been washed by media. With the media, it's a huge influence from media to get people into a certain private sector or unnecessary investigation and so on. So these are the issues. In next round, I will just go on to the regulatory aspect of what's happening in the country. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, isn't it? I think those who are from India here and who had seen the health system in India in 1970, for us will recall, I know, that this is what we observed happening. That because I entered medical school in early 70s in Gujarat, and that's what I saw, that my own professors starting their private practice after the office hours. I also saw that they're setting up diagnostic centers in order to, take advantage of the market that was available for them. Because you will find that around the public hospital, the private diagnostic centers came up. At that time there were X-rays and laboratories, but now they become MRI and scanning and all kind of stuff. So all those things that we have seen. And I remember at that time that as a people's movement, and Medico Friends Circle was the only one at the time on this sin, but none of us really raised the issue of regulating the private sector. So I hope this meeting will be very, very useful to you. But you also have, you have not mentioned thing, but India making forays with corporate hospitals in Sri Lanka, and that impact you have not mentioned, whether it is really a big thing or...
If you give me 1 minute, we have another, because this is one law, but there is another law governing FDIs, foreign direct investment, and we have act coming in 1992 of a BOI, Board of Investments Act, where the general country law does not apply. And under that, there has been serious issues including health, which we have been fighting. And Apollo, which was cited in the morning, came to Sri Lanka. Actually, the hospital is a state-of-art hospital, I have to tell you. And however, there was later about 5 years, there was issues. And some of the shares was taken by one of our main insurance companies, the National Insurance. And the insurance corporation, the previous government also sold to the private sector. So it was in the private sector basically. But after a court case by a government or the official parliamentarian, they proved that this sale was illegal. Therefore it suddenly became the government. So the majority of the stake of the Apollo Hospital came back to the government. So it now becomes a Lanka Hospital, and the whole management changed depending on the share market issue. It was not intentionally taken, but because of the share market shift, because of a court case, and the government got back the whole thing back. So the government owns it through the Insurance Corporation of Sri Lanka. But now it's about 51% or 52%. But now again we know that they are trying to sell those, and another Indian giant is interested in buying it again.
We won't allow them to, keep on their fundamentals. Yeah, now we come to Nepal, right? Will you please describe your system and what are the violations there?
The violation and the problem with the private sector are similar, as it is shared by the Nepal, Bangladesh, or Pakistan and other South Asian countries except Sri Lanka. And the privatization started in our country from 1990. That is the time when the democracy came, and along with that the liberalization came. And according to the policy, it was written that the regulation of the private sector will be an integral part of the liberalization. But the regulation part is left out, and only the liberalization came. And the policy maker government and the bureaucracy has paid no attention to the regulation, and there is a huge private sector investment now in the healthcare industry. And recently there are also some corporate hospitals with billions of the investment. They are also opening up. And that is the one issue. And there are no formal surveys, recent surveys. There is one survey 4 years back, and which says that about 2/3 of population for outpatient as well as inpatient depend on the private sector, and almost 2/3 of expenditure is also out of pocket. And that is also, there is another side of the coin, is that there is a weakening of the public health system, public hospitals. They are weaker, and there is no option available for the people. And as we say, the way the violation of the rights, it is similar. There is more diagnostic tests, more surgeries, more hysterectomies, more C-sections that is going on in the private hospital. And there is another issue, is that there is a rampant privatization of the medical education, and for which we are struggling. And there is a series of hunger strike, there is a series of the protests against the privatization. Now there are almost 18 private medical colleges and only 4 government medical colleges. And the scenario is so worse that there was the merit was totally ignored, and anyone want to admit in the private medical colleges who can pay the bigger amount of the fee, and merit was not considered at all. Now after the series of the struggle, now it has been that the merit will be there, it will be admitted through the central university. Those provisions are made. And another worrying thing is that the many private medical colleges, they are directly linked with the political party that has worsened the situation. And now we know that which medical college is affiliated to which political party or which politician. That is every medical college and a bigger hospital. And that is another problem. And the other issue is that with the series of the struggle, now it came that someone is saying that the Indian Medical Council is core of corruption. Now we came to the conclusion, and it was totally exposed that Nepal Supreme Court is core of corruption, not the council only. That is the situation. And other is that now recently we have formed the constitution 2 years back, which says that the health is a fundamental right. There are a lot of good things enshrined in the constitution, the people's aspiration from the Jan Andolon also, and that are there, but the way we are practicing the health system or way it is implemented, it looks the contradictory, and the present system cannot guarantee that fundamental right. And since 2 years we are now we are also going for the health insurance, and the insurance is national health insurance, but there is a provision that private hospital can be listed as a service provider, and they can claim the reimbursement of the fees. So we are also worried that the regulation will be poor, and then it can become a channel to funnel the public money to the private sector. And the other issues are with the privatization is that there is in the health profession who are working under the government service, they are also allowed to work in the private health institution, and that is also unregulated. And so there is a huge conflict of interest that the government hospitals are never going to improve, because there is a conflict of interest. There the same person works in the private hospital, same person owns the private hospital indirectly, and invests in the private sector indirectly, and works in the private sector, and the same person works in the government sector. And that is actually a main problem why the government hospitals are not improving, why they are not robust, why they are not providing the adequate service. And another thing is that government hospital, government authority or government health system lacks the staff. There is a huge understaffing, and the present staff and the present human resource cannot regulate the whole private sector. And that needs vision in the government, that needs strong action from the government side to regulate. And now recently we are federated. There are 7 provinces, and it is good that the people the services are near the people's door, but there is also a risk that the private owners or private industry can enjoy the weaker regulation of the state or the local body. That risk is also there. We are in the process of transition, and the other regulatory framework will later come next round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Nepal is also going through this same transition where a public system is being undermined, and with expansion of the private sector and encouragement to the private sector, there is a more and more weakening of the public services there. So we are quite close in the situation that way. Although in India you can say that we have a real dominant private sector. You are moving towards that, but I think problems are very, very similar. So that will be very interesting to in the next round to learn about what regulation you are talking about. But we come before that we have Bangladesh, Dr. Rahman and Farida are here. One of you, can you talk about the system and what are the problems there?
Thanks to the organizer for inviting me actually. This is a great learning opportunity for me. I was never been with this bunch of activists ever before. So it was a real learning for me. I usually just attend the scientific conferences and all those related disciplines. So it's a great opportunity for me to learn, and that is why thanks a lot to the organizers. But while I was listening to actually what struck me is, this is totally discussion is focused on the curative cures. But whenever we talk about health, we need to consider about preventive, and that is the strength of Bangladesh. That is why I'm just focusing on, not because of that I'm trying to shift the focus from your area to other area. Bangladesh, after independence, we have installed an excellent primary care setup and covering all of the whole of the population from 72. And our primary care successes are really learning for this region, so far I understand, and we have achieved a lot of indicator-based progress as well as access-based progress. If we consider the indicators like infant mortality, maternal mortality, immunization coverage, sanitation, whatever you name just, we are ahead of this region, other countries of this region. And if you consider the coverage, we were actually ahead of this region. We were covering almost all of the population, absolutely with the rural population, except the very some of the remote places, we were covering all. But as you are always experiencing, this preventive care is still taken care by the public sector. Government is taking care of the whole of the population, preventive care. And that is why the coverage is unique and achievements are unique. But if we shift our focus from pure preventive to curative, we see a little bit of a transition that we are talking about. Whenever we talk for curative care, that's a profitable one. That gives returns, as all of you have mentioned in the first inaugural session, that is the profit-driven session. And that is why that attracts capital. Whenever the economy of Bangladesh was growing, investment started to invest into the health sector, and there comes the first country that actually mobilized that transition is India. Please don't take it as that's not a blame. We were really influenced by your economy, we were really influenced by your healthcare system, and firstly, we were not in that position actually. We were in a good position, but after infiltration of this culture, health-seeking culture, the technical expertise, and all the other, even the finance, whenever they started entering into Bangladesh, our curative care system adversely impacted. And the experiences that you were describing just beforehand, those are the similar experiences we are encountering actually. And that is absolutely in the curative care in the urban area. Because in Bangladesh we have around 70% population still in the rural area, and they are taken care of adequately by our hospitals. We have approximately 65,000 practicing physicians, of which 18,000 employed by the government, and they are distributed all over the country. We have every physician, at least one or two in every union. We have 13,000 support staff that's located for every 6,000 people. We have one person, one healthcare provider there. We have, after 82, we have a development in production of medicine, and that is why we are producing 95% of all of the requirements. So we cover all the essential medicines as well as we are now exporting nation. But unfortunately, whenever we talk about the urban people, whenever we talk about the urban middle class and above, and their medical care, we are encountering the similar problem that you are encountering. And that is common, that is very natural actually. And as you already mentioned, two, we have visited some others as well. That is owned by some of your hospitals, infiltrating in different part of our country. We have visited those hospitals for some other reason. And in addition to that, you are exporting CROs in our country as well. Clinical research organizations, that are started operating in our country, threatening our people, actually putting some threats, additional threats, that we are not habituated to. We are not exactly prepared to deal with those threats. And now we are trying to cope up with the situation. We just, as always we have put some bar on that. Then we are just trying to accommodate that. How can we safeguard our people from this aggression? So that is the situation. We have excellent healthcare system. We have excellent public physician network all over the country. In addition, we have support staff as well. And we have inpatient, that is approximately 70,000 of hospital public bed, 70,000 private bed. And actually, the major population, around 70 to 80% people are getting the treatment from the public facilities. But definitely the problem is similar. And I will request Farida to discuss about the problems. I don't want to talk about those problems.
One thing is that our constitution does not recognize health as a right. It just says that the provision of basic health care by the state, in addition to like food, clothing and health. So in that way, our constitution does not have a very strong guideline for the health right. And the private hospitals have increased tremendously during last 1 decade, and I think it's government hospitals did not increase as much. And if you look at our parliament, our last health minister was a doctor himself, and during his time, the trauma center, he was an orthopedic surgeon, so the trauma centers increased tremendously during his time. So things like that, in the parliament there are doctors, the businessmen are there. And if you say, the malpractices are mostly reported in the media, are happening mostly in the private sector. Although people have the tendency of blaming the government sector, if there is anything wrong in the government sector, that is the big news, but actually most malpractices are happening there. And also, now what happens in the districts, even at the sub-district level, there are private hospitals, there are agents recruited by the private medical clinics to recruit patients. They have miking, they announce in the mic, today so-and-so doctor will be coming, this week you will be able to get treatment. So it's like selling shampoos or like soaps. So things like that are happening. And also I think Saidul will agree with me, I think, on this, that there is a unholy alliance, I would say, with the pharmaceutical industry and the doctors. And every time we go to a doctor, as soon as we come out, the representatives are there to see which medicine is prescribed. So there are motorcycles sitting outside the clinics to watch what kind of medicines are prescribed. And there are a lot of cases of deaths and problems. And I think I don't know if that is the case in India, the use of ICUs in the private hospital is questionable. Now people have started raising questions whether it was really necessary for so many days. Life support use, ventilation use, it has also been a question, and also withholding the dead bodies after the deaths if the payments are not made. And I think one connection we can see nowadays, and that is happening among the middle class and the upper middle class, and even the rich, who are becoming the victims now, because the non-communicable disease has increased. So the kidney disease, cancer, and we have advertisements even in the television scroll. We can see Dr. Devi Shetty is coming on so and so days. So for the cardiac patients, Apollo is a big thing, and Apollo is getting now a very bad name. I can give you that good news. It's really getting a bad name in Bangladesh. Just to finish on this part, I think your Indian TV serials are playing a major role in promoting that malpractice, or that this thing that if you bring an emergency patient to a clinic and if you don't deposit money till then, the patient will not be treated. And we watch that with lot of sympathy and finally accepted that it is okay, and the hero has to go and sing and earn the money to get the treatment. So that kind of promotion is also there. So so this.
Thank you very much. I think we have a very good ground laid down here, and Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka did not shy away from saying that what India is doing, right? Creating a lot of selection for all of you to abandon the good thing that you are doing and come to the market as we are, so that activists can at least unite because of that. What we have found in the 4 countries here is that in true Atlas, right to healthcare is recognized as constitutional right. So you have Kenya and you have Nepal. Both of them have like fundamental rights in India. Both the countries have constitutional right of health. Now what does it mean? I think that is what I would like to ask them in the second round. Is it an aspirational right? The state should aspire to do it, like our directive principle, that aspire to have universal access. Or is it really actionable and it can be implemented? As you said, I think in Kenya, the major task is about implementation. Same way, I think we all have implementation as a major problem with the law. So please also talk about that, and also talk about what regulations are being brought about. Because you have a public servant doing private work, you have a lot of unnecessary diagnostic, unnecessary medical care and all issues. You have the financial irregularities and corruption as issues. You have privatization of medical education as issues. So how it is being brought under regulation in your country? I think that is the second round that we are going to have. And hopefully, try to be as concise as possible so that we have more time to take questions for you from the floor. So what about the regulation? How do you operationalize the right that you have under the Constitution, and also to have a more micro-level regulation of the public and private sectors?
The world has been unable to draw a line between one in public service and one in private service. So in the day, you're in the public service. In the evening, you are in the private service. So it's very easy to ensure that Nairobi Hospital, which is a private entity in Kenya, has all the facilities. So during the day, Dr. Mar, if I would use your name, prefers that in the evening, I see him at Nairobi Hospital because the services are available. At what level can we hold the Kenyan government accountable for not realizing the right to health by having the renal unit for dialysis, for example, so that I do not shuffle between a public and a private facility? So I think it's just a matter of people accepting the right to health means that it has to be accessible, available through public systems. So when we do regulate the private sector, I think we must begin by saying all the services must be available in a public facility. So that if one then chooses to go to a private entity, then you are going to a private entity as a matter of choice. But now what I see in Kenya is the otherwise. We are going to the private entity because the public facilities have been neglected. The services are not available. For example, when I got my first baby, which was I think about 27 years ago, I opted to go to Kenyatta National Hospital. It was the only national referral hospital. But the experience I had was very horrifying. I ended up with a C-section, which I thought was through negligence of the practitioners. But again, just the services available. You are sharing a bed with 1, 2 other women who have gotten babies. The facilities are not enough. If one has been following the Kenyan story this week and last week, women in Kenyatta National Hospital came out to complain because the workers in the next facility, which is the mortuary attendant, have been raping the mothers who get the babies in Kenyatta National Hospital. Reason being that the ward has 1, 2, 3 floors, and the nursery is in a level together with the mortuary level. And in the night, you're expected to come down to breastfeed your baby. In that process, many women have been raped by the mortuary attendants. And then what did we see? The hospital comes out and says, we are not responsible. And thank God for the social media, because all that was recorded. And they denied it. And the women parliamentarians have been there, the Kenyan citizens now have been there to give a voice for the issues to be tackled. What does the public sector do? they say it is a lie. So we begin to have back and forth instead of us saying, where have we gone wrong and how can we make this better? Now, taking that woman, I'm putting myself in my shoe because I got another set of twins. I never stepped in Kenyatta National Hospital again because, I mean, the treatment you go through makes you to decide to go to a private facility. Yet, you would avoid going to a private facility if all you required was available in the public hospital. So what am I saying? I'm saying that we have not taken the citizens' right to matter. And in any case, you will have the Patient's Right Charter is not known, and then you will have a box, a suggestion box. And in public facilities, sorry, nobody ever looks at those boxes to find out the issues raised. And in any case, even when they are raised, they are never taken seriously. So we are getting to a level whereby the regulations for private sector is very minimal. And even when they are found to be negligent, it becomes very challenging. I listened to my brother talking about the loss, I think, of his child. And I'm thinking about a friend I lost some 2 years ago in Nairobi National Hospital, who remained in hospital for 3 months and nobody diagnosed what the problem was, and she had a headache. Finally, when they took her to the theater, they operated on her and she died. It's been 2 years and we cannot access records from Nairobi Hospital, which is one of the leading private hospitals in East Africa. And so what next is, do you go to a court of law? And who is willing to come from Nairobi Hospital to come and stand and say there was negligence? Because clearly we agree and we know and we believe there was negligence. But the system has not been operationalized in a way that I can easily access my medical records to be able to go to a court of law. I mean, when we go to the court of law where I belong, it's another ball game of corruption as well. So I think let's not even try to go there. Let's just stay with what is it and what my brother was asking. Where would I get this second opinion to enable Miss U Nairobi Hospital as an example so that I get justice? I think here we're looking at citizens who need justice, yet nobody gives the information. So the right to information comes in as a very needy right that most of the time is not given. A reason why, the medical doctors who are here, you write in a language we can't understand. You report things when I go every day, I have a patient, I read, I can't understand. So who is this who will make me understand so that I'm able to know, because we are laymen. When we come to hospital, we are expecting our patients will be treated and will get well. But of course, we all know that one day we shall die, but we do not want to die out of negligence. We want to be sure that you took through proper ethics, treated, and lost a patient. Now, medical tourism. Who regulates it? In Kenya, it's not regulated. I once have been a victim here. I've been to Pune Hospital with my husband. And how did we get here? Doctors from India come to Kenya through a Kenyan doctor, through a clinic, and we were seen there. My husband had a degenerating disc, so we were seen there. And immediately they premise heavens, and you begin to process how you get your patient to India. And very enough, we reached Mumbai, were picked by a van from the hospital. We ended up in that hospital, stayed for about a month, went back. But I'm sorry, my husband still suffers the same. But so it's half-half. Right now I have a friend doctor in a hospital in New Delhi. They have been here for the last 3 months. They came from Kenya with the diagnosis of cancer of the pancreas. They were put on chemo and gone through the whole procedure. Last week, they then get to be told, oh, we were treating a wrong cancer and it hasn't responded to that treatment. So now we need to begin treating him for prostate cancer. The patient is too weak. They can't take chemo anymore. Who regulates that? So I mean, just the regulation of medical tourism, which India is well known for. You come to Kenya and anybody who thinks they have the terminal illnesses, They have been brainwashed to think that you come to India, you will get well. Kenyans have lost many of their patients at the hands of the Indian doctors. But somehow nobody pays for the negligence. You would either die in Kenya or India, we do not dispute that. But how do we regularize medical tourism? In Kenya, that hasn't come out very well. And finally, let me talk about the insurance companies. So you're talking about Apollo. When I grew up in the 80s, 90s, there were very few insurance companies. But now everyone has discovered there's a lot of money in medical insurance. Public servants are now being covered by private insurance companies. So you are taking government public money, putting to a public institution to give it to a private insurance company. And most of the time, you know, insurance companies, when the risks fall, they will have the no claim saying that we are not entitled to pay. Now, the government is spending so much money paying insurance companies. Why can't it plow that money back into public facilities so that you're making public facilities amenable to a way that every Kenyan would be willing to go into a public facility? So in other hands, I don't think it's public-private partnership, but I think it's private companies. And some of the private companies are owned by public servants. Senior public servants begin insurance firms. And you are very sure that every government public body will then be insuring its staff. And you're insuring the staff to go to private hospitals. Yet, our public hospitals are in a very, very bad situation. Can the government up its game? Can we have regulations where we have a higher percentage of our GPT going to health? Is that possible? Because we are ending up doing the same through backdoor. We are giving very little money to the government public facilities, yet using huge of our resources to take insurance companies that are private and now plowing the money back into private facilities. So, I mean, many of those things need to be regularized. At the end of the day, where is the citizen who can't afford to go to a hospital, who can't go to a private hospital? They need to rely on the government public service. But sometimes you not even have painkillers. I mean, the reasonable measures at the lowest level would be making the services available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, quite sounds quite familiar. Everything that you said, we are quite going through the same thing. So yeah, now about Sri Lanka.
Yeah. In Sri Lankan context, as I told you, we do not have health as a right in the constitution. Still, starting from 1871, we have a legislation enacted in relation to health. There are more than 60, I think 63 or 64 now, acts enforced on health and health related things, and majority on preventive sector. But issue is when we are looking at the private sector regulatory framework, we have one act which was enacted in 2006, Private Medical Institution Regulation Act. But unfortunately, it does not work as expected. There are few issues that I have to tell. This act was actually drafted for over a decade. And every time it was to come, the private sector goes to Supreme Court. And there is some decision coming back and to include something. And again it is put forward to the agenda, it goes back to the Supreme Court. So 3 times it went to Supreme Court, and finally what happened, the Regulatory Council Constitution, or there are 29 members, it expands from about 9 members finally to 29 members. The quorum is 7. And out of this 29, 9 are from the industry. And about 11 ex officio, and if you look at professional doctors, other people, it is only 4. And there are no lay people. Therefore, the council or the governance body itself is I would rather say it's a odd. So you can't expect things to happen in a government's body where the direction is lost. So on the other hand, it has now become, after now it's 12th year, it's a registration agency rather than an enforceable agency of really monitoring and improvement of the private sector. Therefore, the private sector regulatory framework is fairly weak, and if they ask them to register, and beyond registration there is hardly any actual activity. The prices are not regulated, but it's on those provisions are on the act, and there are many other checks and balances of the act, but it is not enforced. And on one hand, the act also, as I told you, has serious flaws in it. Second, showing those serious flaws, medical fraternity also have shown that with these serious flaws you can't regulate the sector, and the industry also get the advantage of going through these loopholes. So basically the regulatory framework is fairly loose, and that is one of the key things that I have to enlighten you on those. On the other hand, there is some certain issues on implementing it on when the foreign direct investments are used to develop hospital. Because it's, as I told you at the beginning, there's a separate law, Board of Investment, which governs foreign direct investments, and they have given huge fiscal incentives, land, whatever, provisions to bring money into the country. And when it comes like that, then these are become intergovernmental discussions rather than with the jurisdiction of a council. Therefore, whenever a problem comes, the government, the embassies get into the regulatory process rather than the authority being given to the regulatory authority. Just one example, as the Apollo coming and going, I just have to tell, there was an obstetrician who was a lady obstetrician who was working in Apollo Hospital from this country, and there has been so many complications and a couple of deaths of them. Then there was complaints, and but it was not possible for the medical council to initiate any inquiry because the Apollo was working under a different legal framework. And finally, when they started to investigate, there was intervention, and that person just resigned and came. So the investigation stopped there. So all those has to be harmonized in the private sector if we are looking at foreign investment, local investments, and the medical fraternity and how they behave in a given situation. Those are the basic things in the country that I can tell. And there's one other issue. We have a rather good Medicines Act, where regulator of medicines, but when it comes to FDIs and certain private establishments, it's very difficult because there are more political, diplomatic, corporate influences governs the actual functioning than the law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we go to Nepal now. Who is going to talk about, because you said that you have a right to health. Now what kind of regulations are existing and how, what kind of framework for operationalizing that are there, and how effective these regulations are?
Thank you again for the opportunity. Regarding your question just now, the Constitution has just been enshrined 2 years back only, and still the state itself is Nepal itself is in the process of state restructuring. So we do not have still the mechanism to ensure that constitutional right has not been developed yet. But like as per the Constitution, if you go to the court of law that quoting the constitutional right, then you might get the right, but overall the framework and mechanisms for ensuring that and monitoring that has not been yet developed. And regarding the protection of consumers, there is only one Consumer Protection Act is there, that is in action, and centrally that is governed by a Consumer Council, in which there are representatives from different ministries, and then one representative from public, with like usually the representative goes from consumer NGOs which are working in the consumer rights sector, and otherwise there is no much public representation in that consumer council. And at the district level there are compensation committees that is led by the chief district officer who leads that compensation committee, and if there are any grievances about the treatment, then consumers can they can file their grievances in that committee. So we do not have separate framework to protect the health rights, and like it's included in the consumer rights itself. We do not have any separate framework for that. And for the regulation of health professionals, we have Nepal Medical Council, Nepal Nursing Council, and Nepal Health Professions Council. These regulate the health professionals and their code of ethics. And regarding now we have also introduced about that national insurance system, as Dr. Jalvi said, and they have one different modality to entertain the grievances from the consumers. If those people who are still not, it has not been launched nationwide, that insurance system. So in wherever the insurance system has been launched, if they have any grievances, then they can file their complaints to that specific committee under the National Health Insurance System. And then also like some of the things like many of the private medical sector is a part of industry. So some regulation is done by Ministry of Industry and Ministry of Home also, but overall there is no well managed, like they have not coordinated framework like Ministry of Industry and then Health and Home. They have not any coordination to regulate them. And also like these private medical hospitals and private service providers, they need to submit their reports regularly to the district health office. But again, that is not being regulated because as said in the morning also, like the government medical officers, and district health officers, they are already overburdened, and so there is poor regulation about that. And also for one interesting information, like recently our Chief Justice himself has been pulled into controversy for allowing the private medical college, so those private medical colleges he has been alleged that he has been bribed by the private medical colleges, and then he has given they have not fulfilled the criteria, and the Nepal Medical Council did not give the permission to run the college. It cut down the number of seats, but they have given the right. They protected the private medical college, and recently has been brought into controversy, and investigation is also going on. So these are the regulatory frameworks. Otherwise, from human rights perspective also, there are some things, but there is no well-established mechanism for protecting the people's health as such. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We come to Bangladesh. Who is going to talk about the regulation there?
Regarding legislation, actually there's a term, very term patients implies more of protection. Then there are other terms commonly used like consumer and clients. These are the common terms used in our vocabularies, but we are happy to see that you are using the term patients, and that is why that encompasses, whenever we call about private sector, I just want to segregate into 3 areas. One is education, that is private medical education, private sector of involvement in research, and private medical care. And whenever we consider medical education, in our country we have a rapidly expanding medical colleges. We have few laws, and as of your country, we have also same three layer of regulations like Medical Dental Council, the Minister of Health, and universities. And we have a clear policy for establishment and management of private medical colleges since 2011. And we have already closed 9 medical colleges in the last 2 years, and we are expecting that even in the next coming years, we will have we will impose some of the bar on some of the medical colleges, particularly on admission. So a little bit of intervention is already happening in order to regulate private sector medical education, because that has got enormous impact in the future of the medical care. Regarding research, as I have already mentioned about that, we just have entered into the clinical trial scenario. We are competing with China and India. They are giving funnels-like things in our physicians and other hospitals that we can compete with China and India, so that please allow us to enter into this market. So, but fortunately, we have, in our country, as it is a small country, and we have some kind of individual effort can matter in our country. Absolutely, possibly you know about that. We have a drug policy as an individual effort of some people, particularly about health activists like Zafrullah Chaudhry. So in our country, even then right now, we have some individual who can protect our people. So regarding this clinical trial, we are still capable to fight with the infiltration, so that till now, only very few clinical trials is occurring in our country. So we are hoping that we already have some regulations like IRB, NRAC, and we have a clinical trial approval committee in the DG Drug Administrative that wants to have any regulatory framework that enters to that one. If that is an academic one, that can go through IRB and NRAC. We have DSMBs in place, and in addition to the care, we have a not exactly directed towards patients' care. We have a proposed Swasthya Suraksha Ain that is on the pipeline for last 7 years. As of your country, it is just to and from movement of this law. But right now we have only a Consumer Protection Act that is just like other countries. Like we have a Consumer Protection Act 2009 that has very little involvement with this patient. Some of the clauses are directed towards that. So that is all about the law that we have already for different layer of patients who are getting here.
One thing to add, in this Patient and Medical Practitioners Protection Act, this happened because there have been many incidences where a patient died and the relatives had outburst, and they maybe faced the clinic. So they were arrested as criminals, sometimes the doctors were arrested. So there have been a lot of problems like that. So now they came up with this Patient and Medical Practitioners Protection Act, but there were two things in the offences that we also responded, is that in the case of attendants, the offence was non-bailable, whereas in the case of the practitioner, it was bailable. So things like that, there were like some kind of bias, and in fact it was from the influence of the profession, and so that is why it is taking also time. And this High Court is coming up with some ruling. One is about the dead body case, because one newborn child was actually withheld, and my father, being a poor father, had to run away from the hospital because he could not pay the additional 26,000 taka. And so he ran away. And so that kind of things happened. And also I think there has been a High Court ruling on the doctor's handwritten prescriptions, that it should be eligible, that you should be able to read it.
Okay, great. I think we have got about 40 minutes left now, and we still have one more round. And this is a very important round. How do we fight for the rights? That is, I think, very, very important. And there are two things which have become very clear now, that in all the 4 countries, including India, that is the 5th country, that the old systems are really under strain. And the old system were more through the government. That government being a provider of the healthcare services, that is under tremendous strain. And one thing that is happening is that the government itself and the people who are in the government services are in many, many ways responsible for developing the private sector. That means that the private sector development is not is very much encouraged by the government in different ways. So it may be allowing public doctors to work in the private, to allow them to run their own services, be in both the side, in the government as well as private. So the initial capital accumulation is being done through the politicians and the doctors together. So this is how I think all the 5 countries, the system is at the different stages. And the second thing that is becoming very clear from the presentation is that it is not sufficient either to have a right to health as a constitutional right, or it is not sufficient to have even a very good health system, a public health system, in order to really have what I would call patients' rights or people's right to healthcare getting codified in terms of law. That is the justiciability of the right to health. So you have two countries where like fundamental rights, constitutional right to health care is given, and yet there is no way to operationalize it by making it a justiciable right. I'm sure even in Nepal, you will not be able to go to the court and say that I am not given so and so services by the government system, and I should have a right to it. That is simply because it's in the constitution. You don't have a statute which actually creates the conditions. That is what is socio-economic human rights that we talk about, which creates actually conditions for the delivering of that rights. And the same way in Sri Lanka we saw that excellent public health system, but still right is not there. So we have a good policies and system, but it is not converted into law. Not like UK. National Health Services is created by an act of law. Here we create services, but they do not give a legal framework, and so it doesn't become a right. I think this is a scenario in these 5 countries that we have. So keeping that in mind, very briefly, can you describe how you all as a part of the people on the state as well as organizing people in order to improve or strengthen the patient's right and ensure that the state responds to you and creates laws for the regulation? Can you describe in a very concise manner what is happening actually in your own country? So we start with Kenya and then we go to the Sri Lanka.
Okay, using the government mechanism, so it's 2 ways. That within the Kenyan constitution, we now have an accountability framework. And the accountability framework is that the government establishes bodies, those are national human rights bodies, that can hold it to account. And I think this is a structure that came at the global level, where countries have signed on to it, that they agree to have national human rights bodies for accountability purposes. And so we have human rights bodies in most countries. India, Kenya has 3. We have the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights as an accountability body. Then we have the National Gender and Equality Commission and the Ombudsman. So those are establishments within the government machineries, and we have had cases brought before these bodies. Some of the national human rights bodies have been very firm with the government, like the one for Kenya, where when a government has violated a right, you will make a pronouncement that the government has violated that particular right. But most of the national human rights institutions, however, do not have the implementation mechanisms for their observation. So it's an observation made, but in implementation, sometimes you have again to go to a court of law to have it implemented. So the challenging bit is how do we use the national human rights mechanisms for accountability? Number 2, in Kenya has been the civil society organization. They have organized themselves, they have had advocacy measures, they have taken the government to court in terms of failure to deliver on some of the rights. But in the recent past, what we are seeing is that the government has become very tight in terms of regulating NGOs. There are many of them that are finding their offices wound up. There are many of them that are being kicked out of Kenya through measures that are saying they shouldn't be engaging in activities which they are engaging in. In the process, we then find the citizen's voice is not there. Countries have now been very good at mobilizing the citizen's voice. And this can only be done by NGOs or civil society organizations, whereby the citizens are given the information and then they make the demand side of it. Government bodies have not lived the rights-based approach. The duty bearers, who are mostly at the government, have not been able to allow citizens to make the demands. In cases where the demands have been made and not given, and people go to court, the government often comes through the Office of the Attorney General to defend the government in terms of the violation. So in essence, what happens is that you find civil society are left in the middle with citizenry that is not educated, so they do not know what they can claim. Or if you know what you can claim, the legal costs are very prohibitive. You may want to go and challenge it in a court of law, but as a citizen you may not even have money to put food on the table. So then the choice is between you going to court to make the claim vis-a-vis you finding food. Because again, the Kenyan government has not invested in pro bono activities. Pro bono meaning that you have lawyers who can go to court and defend the citizens for no fee. So whichever way, we are finding that the inequality levels are making those who may want to make the claim but are very poor not able to come up and make their own claim. Now, in our view, I think the regulations must be supported with action. The medical practitioners must find it necessary for themselves to regulate their own practice. Private commercialization, I think, for me, must be stopped. How can we ensure that the people running the private health facilities are medical doctors who owe their allegiance to the medical practitioners dentist board, that they can be summoned? Because what happens is you have the private companies by non-professionals running, violating the rights, yet they have the money to corrupt their way through the licensing board and therefore walk away free. So I think the line is how do we make health provision a right and not a charity, and therefore concentrated within the public sector that can easily be controlled by the government, so that we make the public sector more efficient, more active, and limit the number of people or Kenyans who go to the private hospitals.
However, the community of Sri Lanka believe that free healthcare is one of their supreme rights, but we don't have that right, but we think. This has been the practice from generation to generation by subsequent governments before 1977. Actually, the government of Sri Lanka is not bound by legislation to carry it out. As such, privatization of health services is being carried out step by step. Most probably, in time to come, government hospitals may become healthcare awareness centers. In order to avoid this situation, the statement stressing the right of the people to have free health services should be formulated and included in the government constitution under basic human rights of the people. If such a statement is included in the constitution, it will be compulsory for any government to make necessary allocation of funds for healthcare services, so that citizens will reap the benefits. Under the above circumstances, People's Health Movement Sri Lanka has had discussion with medical, sociology and political science university professors. A healthy dialogue also has been commenced with the leaders of trade unions, politicians, civil society members, and also with prominent individuals. During the discussion, we formulated to propose the following section to the include in the constitution. I quote, "Each and every citizen has a fundamental right to receive quality and quantitative and unbiased free medical attention for treatment in case of a disease, ailment or accident, and preventive and consultative services regarding communicable and non-communicable diseases under state expenditure." End of the quote. PHM Sri Lanka, by a letter addressed to the Honorable President and Honorable Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, requested to take necessary steps to include the above mentioned section in the Sri Lankan Constitution. Awareness building programs were also done with the participants of representatives of civil society, political parties, trade unions, religious leaders, professionals and prominent individuals. We published a leaflet in this regard and distributed amongst the members of the civil society. Members of PHM also organized district level meetings to educate the people. The current government, formed in January 2015, decided to formulate a new constitution of Sri Lanka and appointed a committee of public representations on constitutional reforms. PHM Sri Lanka also made presentation to this committee stressing the need to include right to health in the Sri Lankan constitution. Since we had many campaigns on this issue, almost all representatives of other organizations also supported this. We also organized a signature campaign on a petition addressed to the President, Honorable President of Sri Lanka, pressing the need to include right to health in the Sri Lankan constitution at public places such as main railway stations, marketplaces and in front of national hospitals. PHM Sri Lanka was officially invited by the Accelerating Committee of Parliamentarians of Fundamental Rights to give evidence about the constitutional reforms, especially on health rights, and Dr. Vinya, National Coordinator of PHM Sri Lanka, made representation to the committee and has emphasized the need to include the section on right to health to the proposed constitution of Sri Lanka. Thereafter, the Accelerating Committee published a report and has agreed to include right to health to the proposed constitution of Sri Lanka, but it is not in full agreement with our suggested version. With regard to the present status on this, we are carrying out our usual campaigns, but the discussion from the government side is not progressing forward because of the forthcoming local government election due to be held on 10th of February. I would like to emphasize another factor of social barrier on patients' rights. Social stigma is a prominent factor when enforcing patients' rights, especially for people living with HIV, leprosy and TB. Very especially for people living with HIV and their immediate family members. Sometimes they do not get proper treatment, and many times when they went to admit their children to school, they get discriminated. And also they are discriminated from their immediate family, relatives and neighborhood. PHM Sri Lanka is very concerned regarding this issue, and there are two organizations working for people living with HIV, that is Lanka Plus and Positive Women. They are members of PHM in Sri Lanka. These two organizations educate people about HIV and AIDS and how to live with people who are living with HIV. They are also concerned about the family members in facing discrimination from the society. I would like to mention about a case where a person living with HIV was discontinued from his employment when the management found out that he was a positive HIV person. In this regard, the National Christian Council, a member of organization of PHM Sri Lanka, intervened in this regard, and legal action was framed against the employer and forced the organization that this person was reinstated in his job. I think this is a major victory of PHM in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, people are facing a lot of hardship when they have to get treatment for any ailment because of the deterioration of health services in government sector and also the high charges forced upon the people by the private sector. The government resorted to another strategy to promote private practice by introducing sugar-coated health insurance schemes to government servants and for school children. Thereby the government will be able to wash off their hands from providing health services to the masses. There are many incidents violating of health rights of private sector and government sector, but no genuine place to go and complain. Therefore, we demand to establish a health commission for this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. We come to Nepal. Can you tell us what are you doing to make private sector accountable in your country?
Actually, it's a chance for us in Nepal, as I already said, it's in the state of transition, and the nation itself is in the phase of restructuring. So basically, regarding first point is that ensuring development of robust mechanism to ensure basic health care that has been enshrined as constitutional right. Actually, the members of the PHM, activists of the PHM, they have been very vital in the first amendment of National Health Policy that was given in 2014. So this amendment has been done recently, and then in that amendment, though it's yet to be passed from the Parliament, but in that amendment, basically, many of our activists have been involved, like Dr. Moez Maske. He is one of the activists of PHM Nepal, and he was a member secretary of that amendment committee, and Dr. Arjun Karki, and then Dr. Sharad Montas, and I was also involved in that, and I was in the public-private partnership subcommittee of that amendment committee. And then like in that subcommittee, for example, sharing my example, in the first draft that they had brought, they had said that like public-private partnership would be promoted to ensure implementation of like that basic health rights as a constitutional right. So in that we made the amendment like actually the basic health rights that has been enshrined in the constitution should be provided by the government. It is the basic rights of the government, responsibility of the government, and beyond that, then public partnership can be promoted beyond that. So this is an example that, this is just one simple example how we are trying to influence this insurance that basic health rights, health care is insured for the people. And other is national health insurance. We are trying to make it more pro-people. And recently in the one, there has again been amendment in that national health insurance policy as well. And now in that amendment we have been able to make that it is the premium is based on equity, based on the income level. And previously the flat insurance like premium was kept, but now the premium will be decided on the basis of the income of the person who is paying for the premium. So that is another equity-based insurance policy. And also we are trying to, now another challenge in that health insurance is that there is risk of this insurance being exploited by the private sector and then funneling the public fund, as already said. So we are trying hard to make that, ensure that it's not exploited by the private sector. Other is regulation of medical and health professions education. Because what is happening is that the investors as well as the parents are seeing the investment in health as health education as a great investment. So basically, when the manpower itself is produced by the profit motive, then of course that is going to create problem. So myself and Dr. Zawadi, and we have been one of the driving force in the movement that has been led by Dr. Govinda Kesi. Probably you have also heard his name. He has recently ended his 14th hunger strike in the movement to improve the medical education sector. And then National Health Professions Commission is being formed according to our demands and according to that movement. And so we are looking forward that it will be able to regulate that part. And then other is now regulation of private health service providers. There is no specific regulations till now, as the whole state is being restructured. So with our activism, we are hopeful that we will be able to develop the mechanisms that have not been present, and so that also pro-public rather than favoring the private sector. These are our challenges and whatever we have been able to do. And we look forward for inputs from you all so that the experience that we gain from here, we can utilize that in our country, back in our country. Thank you.
In the introduction of Bangladesh, Dr. Ahmad Jasani said that Bangladesh NGO, is a big thing. And I think here, at least, I should name Ganashastha Kendra, and Dr. Zafrullah Chaudhry, and also Dr. Kamal Zaman, who have set up community hospital, Ganashastha Kendra, have really demonstrated that health service can be provided at low cost and it can be reached to the people. And the recent thing that Dr. Zafrullah Chaudhary has done, he is suffering from kidney disease himself. He needs dialysis twice a week. But he has set up, because when he went to take dialysis service from other private clinics, he saw that other people cannot continue dialysis. And finally he set up his own, and now he's providing 1500 taka, as highest for the middle class, and he's providing free to the poor people, and also at a sliding scale also for different people. So this is really a challenge. He's showing that it is possible, and the private hospitals are taking 3,000, 4,000 taka. So I think that has to be acknowledged. And also other NGOs are doing that. There is Shasto Andolon, which we are having as a network. We are always trying to be either on the street or holding seminars or meetings before budget, demanding for higher allocations. So we are trying to watch, and also we are watching the private sector. The Shasto Adhikar Andolon, there is interesting thing is that in Bangladesh, there are doctors' organizations who are also talking about the malpractices and other things. There are Doctors for Environment, Shasto Adhikar Andolon, these are progressive doctors movement, and then also Health Journalist Forum, who are very, very active on reporting many cases. And then the Transparency International Bangladesh are also reporting on the non-compliance and other issues. So these are happening, and we are working together many times and trying to do as much. I just want to mention one point that some human rights lawyers are now mentioning whether we should talk about right to privacy of the patients, because the private hospitals are generating a lot of data of the patients, and they are being recorded, and we have no control over that. So what will happen to them, and are we thinking of anything about it? So this is actually one lawyer just told me before I came that this is what they are thinking of doing. So we will do all these things, and I just before finishing I want to request all of you that we should continue to share among ourselves. If not, if you can't come to a meeting like this, but now there is a virtual world that we can all share, and I think it's very much necessary that in the region we really develop a good accountability of the private sector. Otherwise, the story that you told in the morning is coming, it's a reality, and it will be a big giant thing that we will face. We cannot laugh on this anymore. It's the dead, we are actually crying. So we have to be very serious about it.
Thank you very much. We have 7 people from 4 countries here. Any question, any comment? Yes, please.
We talked about Bangladesh, but what is the role of non-profit organizations or NGOs other than healthcare provision? I mean, other than trust hospitals, in bridging the gap between underprivileged section and healthcare?
In our country, as all of us know, that not for profit, there is NGOs operating a lot, but possibly you understand from Kenya and Sri Lanka. From Kenya, the story is similar because our present government is restrictive on those activities of the NGOs. So beforehand, though they have crucial roles in health, particularly one of the NGOs, as she mentioned about Ganashastra, Dr. Zafrullah played a significant role in developing national drug policy in 1982, and later on in 1990 there was a pro-people national health policy that was opposed by the physician organization BMA. But then onwards, particularly in last 10 years, NGOs are really a little bit of under pressure so that they cannot really play a significant role in bridging the gap. But beforehand they have a significant role, as you mentioned. But right now, some of the NGOs has got good relationship with the government. They are trying to just provide health care, as that's a simple version, at lesser conflict. So that is their way. right now. Possibly this is a breeding space. Possibly in future they will start playing. But the point is, just a few words is, this is the overall health issue is a political issue at the end of the day. So you are not uttering the word at all in the 5 or 6 hours, but it is absurd to achieve health for all without discussing it in political arena. I'm sure I'm maybe an academician, not an activist, possibly or avoiding the term for any particular strategy or purpose, but for sure this is the most political issue. And economic political issues, so political economically, if you don't handle it or if you don't discuss it on that platform, it will never be achieved, I guess. Thank you very much.
You know, there is, in medical colleges, both in Nepal and Bangladesh, you allow non-residents from their countries to come and take admission against particular fees. Lots of Indian students who have failed to enter through the entrance test examinations in India are now moving.
It is Make in Nepal going on. Yeah.
Make in Nepal and Make in Bangladesh also. And interestingly, one of my relatives, who is there in one of the biggest institute which does coaching in India for medical admission, for preparing the boys. I met his son, who is my nephew. He told me that he is going to Dhaka to take admission on that non-resident quota. So he could not make his son prepare to be admitted. So, and now with this National Medical Commission, which we were discussing in the first session, that eligibility test is going to be waived. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. Right now there is an eligibility test when you come back to India. So we are now facing an influx of medical graduates whose quality is under suspicion. So are you people doing anything in that direction?
For Bangladesh case, definitely our admission system is centralized as like your one, and they, after application, receiving that application, they send it in your country for validation, whether they are eligible for in your admission test or not. If they are found eligible, only then they got admission in our country. But possibly there was certain fraudulent in between that, but that is not an issue. But because this is an established practice that our medical council, in collaboration with your council, that is going on. But if there is any fraudulent, that is definitely has to be identified and dealt with case by case. But that cannot be a blame in general, so far I know.
Actually, in Nepal, we ourselves are suffering from the same problem, because many Nepalese people who have failed to get admitted, like I said, it has been seen as one of the lucrative and easy way of investing in health education, and then after coming back, they will earn more. So many low-grade people have gone outside, like mainly in China and many in Bangladesh, and then so they are returning, and we are suffering from similar problem. But currently there is effort to make sure that, like in Nepal also, if they go abroad to study, they need to have passed the entrance exam from some. There is no centralized entrance examination system in Nepal. We are trying for that also, but whatever universities are taking the exam, now the Nepal Medical Council has made it mandatory that they have, if they are going abroad for study also, they have passed the Nepal Medical, some of those entrance examinations, and only then they are eligible. Regarding the foreign nationals, still there is no such provision. So foreign nationals can come and get admitted in universities, but again, in our university also, like for example, I am from BP Koirala Institute of Health Sciences. It's one of the premier medical institute in Nepal, and there also an Institute of Medicine. There also they have to pass the entrance examination. Of course, like there is question about the whether many of these entrance examination are taken separately for foreign nationals. So of course there is some question regarding that, but now there is some provision.
The system fails to register, then this now becomes the quack. And then they operate at the lower level where they will not be noted. So we are creating a problem and transferring it to the less fortunate within the community. So I think we need to critically globally look at this. When we fail to regulate and we allow then the students to go to a neighboring country, Kenya is suffering the same in all the professions, including the law profession. When they come in back, and the rules are very strict for them not to be admitted. But I've gone through a medical training, so I have some basic knowledge. What do? I go to the law field at the district level where I'm hardly noticed, and I open a clinic as a private doctor. And what do? When the regulators come, I'm able to buy my way out by corruption. So it's a big problem. So you don't register, I will go under and practice at the lower level, and I continue practicing as a quack. So it's an issue that needs to be attended to.
We have, I think, learned a lot from these 4 countries. We know that their situation is quite similar to us, and it's necessary that there is a better alliance within the People's Health Movement with the countries who are going through the similar experience as ours. And I think we learn from each other, and by supporting and solidarizing with each other, perhaps we may be able to, improve the systems in all the countries. So thank you very much for being here and for providing all this input. And thank you for all your patience in